4-day working. All the headlines suggest that 4-day working boosts productivity, increases output, and is remarkably good for your employees' health and well-being. But on the surface, it's hard to believe that people can get more done in 4 days than they can in 5. So what's the truth? Are 4-day weeks better than 5-day weeks or not? I think we can all agree that Saturdays are very nice. So 2 Saturdays a week sounds good, yeah? Ooh, sounds lovely. So why do we work 4 days anyway? It was Henry Ford of Ford Motors that first conceptualized, or at least is credited with, the 5-day week from way back in the 1920s. And it wasn't for 100 years that we even considered making a change until something very significant happened. Cue COVID. Since the pandemic, remote work has surged. So too has the idea of 4-day working. There are tons and tons of studies from lots of different countries around the world and hundreds of organizations that have all come to the conclusion that 4-day working is a good thing for both companies and employees. But how can it be possible that working 4 days increases productivity? Are they really good, or is it just highlighted that people should have been doing more this whole time and that 4-day working is really just for people who were wasting time before? It stands to reason that if you can do your job in 4 days a week that you used to do in 5 days per week, then you should always have been doing it in 4 days a week. What were you doing before? Why was it taking you 5? Is it because the expectation previously was that it would take you 5 days and therefore you filled 5 days with your work, coffee breaks, a little trip down the shops, a little browse on the internet? And now you've got 4 days, and so you've become more efficient. You've become more regimented in how you work. You're working smarter, you're working faster. If so, why weren't you doing that this whole time? I mean, if going from 5 days to 4 days means people can be more productive and can still do the same job, then where does that end? Can you do your job in 3 days a week? How about 2? One study conducted by Microsoft saw that people were 40% more productive in a 4-day week than a 5-day. 40% more productive. And most of the studies around the world, in fact almost all of them, have widely come to the same conclusion that working fewer days increases productivity and output. Now, to me what that means is that this exchange of time for money or work wasn't the right system in the first place. The problem has very little to do with the number of days you work or the number of hours you work, and far more to do with the expectations of your output. Let me explain. If I ask you to paint a wall for me and I tell you that I will pay you £100 and I expect it to take 5 days, then you are not incentivized to do it any faster than 5 days. However, if I ask you to paint the same wall for me and I'll pay you £100, irrespective of how long it takes you to do it, then you're far more likely to do it faster than 5 days. All these companies who are seeing productivity increases for people who now can do their work in 4 days rather than 5, all had a remuneration system where they exchanged time for money. People were paid to come to work for a set number of hours, days, weeks. Now there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But if they had a remuneration system which was based on money for outputs, money for results, irrespective of time, then would 4-day working even be a thing? If people were hired and given a certain responsibility, given ownership over a particular outcome, and they were paid based on that outcome, then there would be no need to monitor hours or days at all. If you achieve X, I will pay you Y. A responsibility-based reward system where we exchange money for X outcome doesn't require anyone to monitor hours or number of days or anything like that. It's self-regulating on time. Gig economy businesses like Uber or Deliveroo, drivers and riders, they get paid based on outcomes. Delivering a person or food, they can work 1 day a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, whenever they want, however many hours. The amount of return they get, the reward, the cash that they get, depends on how many outcomes they deliver, not how many days. A Deliveroo driver isn't just riding around town without delivering anything and expecting to get paid. It's not about hours, it's about outcomes. Now, of course, this isn't really viable in all situations. Shops, contact centers, customer service teams, hospitals, schools, they need to have a certain number of boots on the ground. So let's have a look at 4-day working, just parking the concept of productivity for a second. There are strong indicators and lots of research all saying the same thing. 4-day working rather than 5 is good for people's mental health and well-being. Well, that's hardly rocket science. People working less are healthier and happier. Breaking news. I do, however, see some short-term benefits for employers. For instance, it would give you an unfair advantage in the short term in the hiring market. You're likely to attract more good quality talent who want to come and work 4 days a week. That is, of course, until everybody else starts doing 4 days a week and then your advantage disappears. The same goes for retention. Once somebody comes and works at your organization doing 4 days a week, it's probably less likely that they will go to a different job doing 5 days a week because they get used to that new way of life. Again, only an advantage until, if, when there is a wider level of adoption of 4-day working. Then there's creativity. I, for one, strongly subscribe to the idea that rest and time away from the work environment is good for idea generation. So there's quite possibly something in that, but there's yet to be any actual evidence of that. Operationally, of course, there may be some hard choices to make. How do you manage which days off your team have? How do you make sure that that works well inside your business? But I think effective workforce planning and people management can overcome that problem quite easily. Then there's pay. Do you give people a 20% pay decrease in order to drop down to 4 days a week? Or do you keep pay the same and effectively give everybody a 20% pay increase? For me, there is, however, one overarching positive thing to say about 4-day working and why I'm implementing 4-day working in my business. It's just nice. As a business owner, I've long had the flexibility over my time. I get to come and go when I choose. I get the luxury of having control and management over when I'm in the office and when I'm not. And by implementing 4-day working for my team, for my people, they get to share a bit of that. They get to have that same flexibility. And I would like to think that I wouldn't ask my people to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And I would like to work 4 days a week. I work hard. I'm not doing 4 days a week because I'm lazy or I don't want to be at work. I love what I do, but I also value balance, and so I can share that with my team. That's nice. The key to making it work, however, is ownership and targets. It has very little to do with an exchange of time for money. People need to own an area of responsibility. They need to have outputs that you're rewarding them for and you're valuing them for. If they do that, and they can do that in a day or 2 days, then great, they can have the rest of the week off. If they deliver the thing that I'm asking them to deliver, then they can have as much time off as they want. But they should probably be prepared to be given some extra responsibility the week after. I hope that helped. Thanks for watching. See you next time.